recording. Yeah. Okay, so we're being recorded now. And good morning, Canada. Good evening, Mongolia. And good afternoon for those who are joining us from Europe. And thank you very much for all joining us today. This is our closing and fourth session for the Mongolian election, and we will be talking about the election results. And I am BULGAN Batdorj, and I'll be your moderator. And we are joined by Dr. Julian Dierkes. He teaches at the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs at the University of British Columbia. And he also runs the Mongolia Focus blog post here. And we have lots of posts there on our election campaign and election results. And if you guys want to take a look, please visit our blog post. And today we are also joined by Dr. Otgontugs. She is with the National University of Mongolia. And if many of you may know that she ran for the election 2020 from Zulfung Electorat. And we're very glad that you're joining us today. And of course, Dr. Marissa SMITH here. She holds a PhD from Princeton University, and she's a member of board of directors at the American Center for Mongolian Studies, and she's been conducting research in Mongolia since 2007. And just a reminder, housekeeping messages that our session is being recorded. Q&A session, you can raise your hand or send us a chat with your questions. Okay, thank you, and I'll hand it over to Julian. Thank you, Julian.
Very good. Good morning, everyone. We've been sort of running hard for about 4 weeks following the campaign and trying to keep track of things, and everything came to a culmination on Wednesday with the actual vote. As it turns out, the result is a bit anticlimactic in the sense that it's so clear that there isn't very much to talk about. But we'll give it a try anyway. I think there are some aspects that are certainly worth discussing that we'll try to highlight. And as BULGAN mentioned, it's such a pleasure to have Otgontugs join us with a first-hand view of what campaign life is, particularly because she's an academic. And so in many ways, I think we probably think alike. And so how Otgontugs has experienced the campaign will be terrific to hear. Just to mention that Gyamba and Mende continue to contribute to our work. And then we've used some of the pictures that the Friedrich Ebert Foundation office in Ulaanbaatar has on their photo blog. Check out sometime. It's a nice collection of lots of photos, particularly from Ulaanbaatar from the campaign, but it's nice to see. So BULGAN and I are, of course, on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people here in Vancouver, and Marissa speaks to us from the territory of the Ohlone people in the Bay Area in California. And it's always good to remember what privileges we have in residing in these territories, uninvited but very appreciative of the long history of learning that has also occurred amongst First Nations people and others. Let me just jump right in and give sort of the big overview of the results, but start out with some of the controversies that are lingering to some extent. Of course, one of the things that was quite concerning along the way was that a number of candidates ended up with significant legal challenges. And it's very hard to speak about the individual allegations against particular people, but the fact that during an election campaign, courts were active, the election commission was not active, is a concern in that many of these legal challenges seem to be politically motivated, at least in some way, although it's a mystery from where and how, and sort of idle speculation to think about that. But the very fact that candidates are under legal threat is certainly a great concern, and this concern continues in the sense that certainly former Prime Minister Adenbad won his election seat, but has court dates ahead of himself, and so these legal challenges continue. When Marissa speaks later on some of the people who were not elected, some of them quite prominent, that also includes a number of individuals who were facing their own prosecution and legal challenges. There are ongoing allegations of electoral fraud. It was relatively quiet, I think, from my perspective on Thursday, but then started heating up on Friday. I have said before that paying close attention in previous elections and serving as an election observer, I tend towards getting frustrated with some of these allegations. in part because they undermine trust in an electoral system without offering much evidence. I have to say I'm not very impressed by the jumping comma that has been very much the focus of allegations of fraud. On some, for those of you who've been following this, it's been mostly, as far as I can tell, mostly a social media phenomenon. But people showing screenshots of when the Electoral Commission, those screens that were up behind the TV broadcasts, if you watch them, certain candidates, when they were at 4 digits, had a comma and certain others didn't. And many people interpret this to be a sign of, oh, someone must have been messing with the numbers in the background. I just don't find that very plausible myself. But let me emphasize that that's just kind of my view of this. And likewise, some of the other allegations that are coming now, you know, what MPP candidate started the election with a concert or not. Yes, concerts are illegal as a way to draw people into campaign events and so forth. However, I don't think a concert or not probably didn't tip the difference, tip the scales in this particular election given the results. And so I do find that not a constructive way to deal with the result, and other parties have accepted the results, and if there are allegations of fraud to be made, then let's see some evidence, and we haven't seen very much of that. So that just as a bit of a preliminary to what's been happening since Wednesday. If we go to the next slide, BULGAN. You know, am I missing an overview slide somewhere ahead that we skipped? And a turnout slide, or is that coming later? A brief pause to readjust our presentation orders. I thought I would start out talking about an overview of the results, and had a slide for that. BULGAN, you're muted, so I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, that I don't have any more slides, Julian, and I have this one, and then I have Dr. Otgontugs' slide.
Okay, my apologies. Somehow my slides got deleted. That's all right. So let me just speak off the cuff then before I return to the split vote question. So as all of you will have noticed in the news, I suspect, right, a big triumph by the Mongolian People's Party. They were reelected and they come into the new parliament holding 62 seats. Last parliament opened with 65 seats for the MPP, so virtually the same number. The Democratic Party gained 11, they're at 11 seats now, and then 1 seat each for Orkhon, who ran for the Right Person Electorate coalition, as did Otgontugs. Then a seat for Batdorj, who is representing the Mongolian People's Revolutionary Party, and who was the presidential candidate in 2017, of course. And the final seat went to Otgontugs in Erdnet, an area that Marissa is a specialist on and will probably have something to say about. But Otgontugs, of course, a former prime minister for the Democratic Party who obviously had a falling out with his party leadership and then decided to run as an independent instead. Turnout was 73.65. Now that I have to remember that number, but am I remembering that right? I'll look for some nods, but I'm pretty sure it was 73.65. It was BULGAN's nodding. Slightly up from the last elections, highest for a parliamentary election since 2000. A little bit mixed perhaps on turnout. There was a very strong effort, particularly to bring out younger voters in the city, a big social media campaign that many of you will have seen in the days leading up to the election. And for those of us watching online, and of course we were all reduced to watching online for not being in Mongolia because of the COVID pandemic, there was a fair bit of excitement, certainly right when the polls were opening. People were posting all those pictures with themselves in their day, a bit of a fashion statement going along with that, but also in a way that I can't remember from the previous elections, at least, posts that said, I voted. Those of you like Marissa in the US know the buttons that people often wear on voting day when they've gone to the polls and then walk around with an I voted button. It was a little bit like that. And so there was a fair bit of excitement early on in the polls, but then maybe that slowed down a little bit. It's a bit unclear. The weather turned bad, whether some hail in Ulaanbaatar, there was a bit of flooding later on in the day that might have discouraged some people. And so in the end, a slightly higher turnout, but not a leap, not a big jump in turnout. overall, I think it's fair to say that despite the pandemic, the COVID hygiene restrictions, everything we could see online at least, and this is all, of course, tempered by the narrow focus we have on social media that probably focuses almost exclusively on Ulaanbaatar rather than the countryside. And Otgontugs probably not even very much on Dahan. But so as far as we could tell, the election went orderly, and the people were had to line up outside, and so there was an issue with the weather and so forth. But it seemed like all the images showed people with the appropriate gloves and masks, and also moving through the process in a relatively speedy and efficient fashion. So there did not seem to be major issues that arose from the COVID restrictions, as far as one was able to tell. And there were also not great lines of people lined up at 10 at night when the polls closed, something that I had been a bit afraid about, because I'd feared that the whole process would just slow down, but that did not seem to be the case. So when the vote counting, the vote tabulation machines shut off at 10, not much, there weren't big lines of people who were not allowed to vote at that point. Let me then go to I mentioned the controversies, and let me go to the split vote slide. Right, so this is sort of my handover then to Otgontugs next, but I think there was a fair bit of excitement around changes in the makeup of the candidates. The earlier slide that I would have had that talked about the MPP, one of the most notable things about the 62 members that are coming into Parliament now is that 27 of them were not members in the previous Parliament. So there are, to some extent at least, there is a generational changeover. These are new faces, although obviously it's the MPP, so there's some stability in terms of the party in power. Hugelzog himself won his seat in Henty. Finally, he's been a prime minister without a parliamentary seat for 3 years. He's won his seat. He did win the largest vote share anywhere in the country, in Henty. But so we have a different group of people, and some of the early excitement about the election was certainly particularly about the people who were putting themselves forward for election this time. And one of the reasons I asked Otgontugs to join us is she's exactly one of those people. I think Otgontugs, right, when we met in December, you certainly didn't tell me that you were planning to run, but I don't think you were actually planning to run in December. And there were a lot of people that came on board to the Huden slate, which joined the Right Person Elektorat coalition, that were not expected necessarily to win. And to me, this was a particularly hopeful sign, because it was after some years of frustration in the political system, this was a significant number of people taking a step of saying, no, I'm fed up, but I have the opportunity to put myself forward, to put forward a different kind of view of politics and the political process, and to put that to the test, probably not necessarily to win a seat, but in large part also to change political culture. And so that's really the question that arises from some of this. I think the DP is in serious trouble, in the sense that, and Marissa will talk about some individuals, but many of its bosses, if you will, its long-standing prominent politicians did not win seats. And this counters a little bit the ongoing discourse about how the electoral system was so skewed towards prominence and incumbents, because we had some very prominent DP candidates, also, by the way, some MPP candidates, who did not win. So prominence by itself was not a winning ticket, if you will. Then the other question that also arises from the electoral system is that much of the reaction afterwards, particularly about the Right Person Elektorat coalition, was, the vote was split, and that's why no seats were won. And I would quibble with that a little bit, because there are only 2 ridings where, even if you combine the 3 candidates' votes, which of course doesn't quite make sense, because people would have still had to vote for 2 other people if they combined on one, and who knows whether all those voters like one candidate from a particular coalition in any case. But even if you combine them, they would have barely challenged for a seat. And so it's a little too easy to blame a split vote on the fact that or to blame the fact that people were not elected on a split vote and the electoral system only. But I think it's a bit more of a complex of factors that has to do with the MPP's relative administrative success recently, but also its organizational power, and of course also with a skewed electoral system that gives many more seats to the countryside than it does to the city. And so there's still, you know, we're just 4 days after, so there's still some analyses to be done and some thinking to be had about what exactly happened. But before we jump into more individuals, I wanted to ask Otgontugs to just offer a little bit of a reflection on the campaign, what her experience was like. What is it like to be an academic who suddenly I assume you had to kiss a lot of babies, although COVID restrictions probably kept you from shaking too many hands. What was it like? What was your experience, Otgontugs?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to this talk. And my name is Otgontugs. I'm the professor in economics at National University of Mongolia. I'm there since 1995. And I'm suddenly decided to run for the office, you know, MPC. That was very quite unexpected thing for many people, including myself, my family members. But I, since starting this new year, you know, 2020, I just decided to run because since I'm the mentor usually for many young people in this country, including my students, former and current students, I thought that I need to protect these young people who decided to really spend their time, money, and efforts, all their heart to make changes in this political landscape in this country, which is run by only two parties, political parties. So third power, which is run by these young people, it's very quite new thing in this country. So I decided to join them, since many of them my students, former students. So I felt like I need them not to protect, but to join them, to show that it's not only run by just unexperienced young people, young people's movement. It's just, I wanted to show that it's the real political party. It's a real political movement. So joined by the people from different age, gender, the income level, all these things. But eventually we are like the people who are more educated. Many of us educated not in this country, but in other countries, like including Japan, Canada, or the US or UK. So we have more, the little bit higher education compared to other parties, candidates. So that's why I joined the political party and decided to run. That's my reason. My main reason is just to join these young people in their fight for, to win this seats in this new incoming parliament, to make changes in this country. So when something is very important enough, you kind of do it. Even you knew that the probability of favor odds are not in your favor, you have low probability, but anyway, you do it. So that was in my case. So I run in the countryside in a small city called Orkhon. This is my hometown. I decided to run there. So right person electorate, this coalition consists from the three political party. One is that our young party, right? The Hun party, and another one is social democratic party. Another one is that the youngest political party in this country, established by the usually people who are graduated, who were educated in Japanese universities. They speak Japanese, English. They have more, they have more degree, doctoral degrees holders in their political party. So kind of the the intellectuals, kind of this very highly educated people gathered in this coalition. So we, how we decided to run in any given district is usually decided by us, not by our chairman of the political party, decided by us, which gave us more freedom in deciding where to run, to choose districts that with which we were comfortable enough. So I run in Darkhan, and it's a very small city, not small city, by the way. It has 30,000 households and more than 100,000 citizens in this small city. So the political campaigning took only 21 days, took only 3 weeks. So these 3 weeks run by by this in such a speedy time. So I didn't realize that it was such a huge thing that to do things from the early 8 a.m. and start with and finish it by 10 p.m. And even after 10 p.m. you need to come to your headquarters and decide and planning all these things. So in my opinion, this election, 2020 election, went without any measure, black, as we say in this country, black PR. It went in normal way, you know. All this political party are competing with each other. We had many independent runners compared to the last elections. So it was very interesting election, by the way. And another thing is we had so many candidates, 606 candidates. So that was huge, you know. I'm an economist. I usually, you know, teach microeconomics. I teach theory of choice, you know, all these things. And that when you have so many choices, you don't make good choice. That's proven by science. Not only by economics, but it's proven by psychology, all the sciences. So with this time, Mongolian voters were, you know, they had so many people to choose from it. So they choose only this stability, not to run to pick the many interesting new faces, but rather to focus to stay with the old faces, old political party, People's Party. They choose in the favor of stability. They choose in the favor of retaining their jobs, mainly retaining their jobs, retaining their certainty in their business. That's why I think the people made such a choices. But our coalition made huge wave, very new thing in this country this time. I'm so proud of it, very proud. And I'm very proud that I'm the part of it. And because of us, I think, so many new young voters went to the polling stations. They were dressed in the tails, making very nice photos, selfies, and posted on their Facebooks, and to show that they voted already, they participated in this political process. So we made the young people to realize that it's very important to participate, very important to vote, very important to think about the future of this society in this country by just going there, just, cycling, three names, three choices. So I think that's why I'm so happy that this election went in this way. And there's many things to say and discuss and reflect on, but the new thing that I can offer as an academic person is to explain to you, three of the presenters and also online people, that 2020 election was very new thing, very fresh movement by inviting so many people to the polling stations, and also people like me who were not interested in the running for the office who decided to run for the office. So such a new thing. But another thing is to say is about not such a good things. First of all, is still there's discussion. We after the election night, so many young people got very upset with the election results. They thought that since all of them went to the election polls and decided to choose new faces, like people like from our coalition, they expected that we will win, not landslide, but we will win some. We will have more than 5 or 6 seats as a coalition, but it didn't happen. So the young people, they got very upset, and I'm afraid that for next time, after 4 years, they will decide, oh, why I should go there to vote if I can't make any changes, I can't make any difference, if my vote is not counted as it's supposed to be. So that's the kind of concern about the young voters. About middle age, by elderly population, what they did their thing. All of them went to, from since 7 a.m. For example, my mom went to vote just after 7 a.m. She is the 88 years old lady. So, this kind of people, this age group, they went to vote very early hours. And of course, they choose, the Mongolian People's Party over it, because they, didn't know this party from young age. So that's not so good thing, that young people's trust is broken in this system. Second thing is, I think as a candidate who ran for the election and also for observer, I think that main institution like General Election Committee, that's the main institution who runs this show, they didn't do a good job. They're supposed to work for all political parties, for all candidates, regardless from their original, this gender or location or political party belongings. So they usually favorite this, this ruling party, which is the People's Party. And all the people who worked in this election committees were usually from their party. So they favored this one political party. So that's why the small parties and the Democratic Party and independent people got very frustrated with this General Election Committee attitude, behavior, the way how they solve the problems, and the way how they informed these candidates or voters. So so that's the second my argument. Third, my argument is why this election, 2020 election, was different or interesting or upsetting is that we didn't know about there is another institution who is the General Registration Committee in this country, who is, you know, who comes up with the names of the voters. So this organization didn't give us the names of voters. So we suspect not only us, our coalition, all voters and all candidates, all actors who participated in this show, we are suspecting that there maybe double accounting, double voting process took place, maybe because many people moved to another district in favor to vote for their mom or relatives, or, you know, for the friend, kind of things. Even this process was stopped in the by law in February. Before February, every political organizations and the people who knew that they will run for the office, for the election, they made these people move, not physically, but their registration to move from UB to Aimag, the countryside, or from countryside to UB. So people in this country are not sure that the people voted just once. The person voted just once, maybe. Maybe there was 2 or 3 times someone has voted. And also there's about 200,000 Mongolians who live abroad, who didn't vote in this parliamentary election. And so their registration in this country, you know, the main registration. So they are not sure. These people are not sure that whether someone voted on their names using their registration number, their name, first name, last name. We're supposed to use that, you know, fingerprints. But in some polls, there are some talks are going on that, you know, that the equipment didn't work out or for some reason, people were voted. And in Darkhan, where I have been there, another candidate whose name is he complained to election committee that his relative, very close relative, for example, his cousin or something, he came to the polling station and he found out that instead of him, someone already has voted on his name. That was a fact. So they went to the police station. First they went to this committee, the committee. And committee said, oh, they should go to police station. So they went to the police station. This is going on. This is going on. We didn't hear anything from this police station or local election committee. Such a bizarre thing has happened regarding registration issue. It's not voting, registration issue. That's the 3 main things that I would like to share with you on my experience in this 2020 election. I'm not sure whether it was full or full picture that I gave to you. But you can ask me questions. I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much. And Marissa, over to you. And if you have questions, you guys can send me in a chat, or after the presentation, we can have a discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Otgontugs. It was really interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, I just want to talk briefly about just kind of a who's who. So first, who didn't get elected? Yeah. So here's a big list of names of important Democratic Party people who didn't get reelected. Several of these people were arrested. I don't, are they still in jail? Are they?
Yeah, they're still there.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I hadn't looked, so crazy. So that's, I think, Gambold and Bjambasek and then further down the list, Bartsokt. So anyway, yeah, this is a big deal. Amrit Jargal, of course, was the former prime minister who they said would be the prime minister if the DP won somehow. So they were maybe shooting for some sort of star power to get him elected, and he didn't get elected either. So also Lunde Johnson is an MPP member who has actually been, I think, in every single Icaral since 1990. Yeah, yes. And he got kicked out. And there was a little campaign, or I saw sort of a social media campaign before the election that was sort of pointing out that he had been there so long. So it was interesting to see he was not reelected. Other surprises, so Batdorj did not get reelected, and he's also someone who's been in for quite a long time and has been very prominent in the Internet 49% thing. He's been on that standing committee. Bartsokt also didn't get elected, and now there's been people tweeting again about there being an investigation into offshore money transactions involving Swiss bank accounts, and they're putting Batdorj and Bartsokt together in that. But yeah, so neither of them got reelected. Bartsokt was arrested. Batdorj was not. So Batsanden and Lou Bold, also interesting because they have been with the DP in the past, but they broke off this time and were part of this new coalition that no one got elected from at all. A couple of other people, Nomtoa Bayer was also someone who was arrested. I actually am not up on what was going on there, but there was a very high profile thing with him before the election, and his registration was not approved. So he didn't even appear on the ballot, right?
No.
Yeah, he didn't appear on the ballot. And then also Jafklan, the famous singer, was not reelected. He had been an independent.
Got very upset.
Yes, he got very upset. And I saw on his Facebook that he was sort of resharing a lot of the stuff about like the commas and he made like a long statement, but my reading of that was he was sort of actually criticizing the Democratic Party for their party organization and for not pulling together. And yeah, so that was that. Yeah, so I think it's good everyone knows that these guys didn't get reelected. Important to know. And I think again also this just strengthens the point that the DP is having in serious disarray. Yeah. Okay. So next slide, please. I wanted to point out that many of the people who got elected were our Aimag governors. And this is important. So I recently published an article about this phenomenon. So Aimag governors are technically elected by local councils, but they actually need to be approved by the prime minister. So yes. What you generally see is you see people who are very important to the party that's currently in power in parliament are choosing the governors. So you often have a local governor who is from the same party. But they don't necessarily get elected when they run for parliament. So I don't know a ton about these various constituencies except for Orkhon. I did witness in 2012 the Democratic Party's governor. He ran for election in Erdenet, and he did not get reelected. He had also been like the most controversial local politician. Like people were constantly blaming him for like the garbage not being collected. But also people were talking about various former Aimag governors being involved in buildings and construction projects that didn't come off. Anyway, so I think that this is an interesting place to look for where you have the party machines promoting certain people, but they still have to get elected. And they don't always get elected. So I think that this is an interesting place to maybe look for certain kinds of political legitimacy being expressed by people, whether they vote for these people or not.
So by the way, they're all men.
Yeah. Well, okay, but let me get to the next part, because some of the former governors were elected by the DP, and that included the former governor of Bayangol district, right? Otgontugs? Oh,
Yes.
Yeah. So who is a woman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just checking. Yes. So that is the case there. But then again, they had the current governors who were Democratic from like Zavkhan not elected. So, but anyway, yeah. So this is an interesting sort of cluster of people who were elected are these Zaskdarg. Okay. Next slide, please. Also important to note, we have some prominent business people and people associated with banks. This is also interesting that Bold is no longer a member of parliament because, of course, he was associated with Bodhi Insurance and Galomt Bank. So it's not just that this is an MPP thing that happens. But yeah, so we have Tesso, which is, they make, my favorite ice cream with sea buckthorn, but they also own the Hunu concrete factory. So I think that this is really important to talk about in Mongolia. We have these conglomerate corporations and what kind of power those kind of companies have. And it's not just a Mongolia thing. We have these in Japan as well, these multi-sector conglomerates. Also, there's the Gem Group. Gem mostly does, vodka, and they also own the Hujert, not just like as like the sparkling water, mineral water factory, but also like they're building like a resort there. So that's a little bit multi-sector. Also, former head of the development bank, who also did Mongolia Shark Tank, got elected. Speaking again of these companies that have potentially a lot of power to be involved in these large infrastructure projects, Sod Mongol, which is one of the main like fuel companies. I don't know what share they have in that, but of course, remember also that Mongolia is still importing like almost all of its gasoline, petroleum products from Russia. There have been efforts to, of course, build refineries, but these have not come to pass yet. So that's important. Also, the head of Hera Holdings got elected. This is, I think, a smaller company, but they also are involved in, road construction and mining. They provide equipment. So yeah, I think it's good to know about these things and sort of watch these things. Okay.
Yeah.
Next slide. I think that might be my last slide. Oh yeah, also, yeah, so Erdenet had a very interesting group of candidates, and interesting who got elected. So their Aimag governor, Batdorj, got elected from People's Party.
He got.
Which is not a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Batdorj, who I have known, people I know approve of him, and I've known him to be fairly popular in Erdenet. He was running in that constituency and did not get elected. So that's interesting. I'm going to look into that. But yeah, Altunhuyug, he got elected, and yeah, of course, he was a former prime minister for the Democratic Party who had this falling out around like 2015. Of course, he has a long history. He started out, he was part of the Social Democratic Party, and then when the parties merged in 2008, he went with the Democratic Party, and then he eventually became prime minister. But then he ended up very publicly criticizing Batdorj. And that was kind of where that was left in around 2015. So, and then Saikan Bilig, of course, became prime minister. So I don't know if it was sort of symbolic that he ran in Erdonet, because of course Saikan Bilig is the one who dropped the huge 49% thing right on the eve of the last parliamentary elections. Also, Batdorj has this association with Erdonet. He grew up in Erdonet and worked at the factory. But yeah, I've kind of gone back and looked at his campaign materials, and he was basically saying he wanted to promote like some sort of like thirds. The factory would control a third of the product of the factory, and the city would own a third of the product, and then the people of Erdonet would own a third. So I'm not sure what all that means, but yeah, he got elected. Also, so Ganbatur, who people may remember, he was actually in parliament for Darkhan, right? In 2012, he was elected.
Yes, surprisingly, from Darkhan, he was elected. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And he's actually from Bayan Hungar, right?
Yeah, but
so
he grew up in Darkhan, actually.
Okay.
He was the student of my mother.
Oh, interesting.
My parents are high school teachers. So
okay.
They knew everyone who grew up in Darkhan. So
Yeah.
he was there. He grew up in Darkhan, and he got elected from Darkhan last time. So this time he got elected from Erdonet.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and I didn't see any of his campaigning. Like I had sort of been following the campaigns a bit, and I hadn't even seen him campaigning. But yeah, he ran for president in 2017 with the MPRP, and he had been saying circa 2015 that he was a resource nationalist and like really claiming that mantle. There's actually an interesting interview he gave in English where he's highly critical of the OT agreement and all that stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting set of people who got elected from Erdonet. Yeah, so I will be watching that and writing something up soon, hopefully. Okay, I think that's my bit.
Thank you, Marissa. And this is my slide on the women representation in Mongolian Parliament. Just before going in there, I want to jump on the reflection train. Hence, I'm the Mongolian, so I thought maybe just share some of my reflections of the election. I really echo what Dr. Otgontugs said about the no black PR this election, and it was really amazing to see, because I was like keep waiting for the big bomb to be dropped, some big video recording or something bad about the candidate, and that never happened. So it's actually really good good culture that's setting up in the politics in the elections world. And there was in the beginning during the campaign or just when they announced the number of the candidates, I did have a hope that it was a different election, and I was excited about all sorts of different people running and independent candidates running. It was nice to see, and of course Zhu Hong Elektorat coalition has done a good job as well. The hope I had around is that to have some sort of a representation in the parliament that encompasses some sort of a knowledge, education, and moral value, it's nice to have, it's nice to be represented in a parliament with those kinds of figures. But maybe another year, another election. Yeah. I think that young voters will be discouraged. Probably would not. I know I'm falling off the young voter from this year. So the young voter were from 18 to 35, And the next election, I will not be in the young voter bracket. So I don't know, I'll be the older voter. So yeah. Okay, on the women representation in Mongolian Parliament, I just put up here a table that shows the last 5 elections, how the women is represented. It wasn't a big number since 2004. As you can see, we had only 40 candidates and we had 66 candidates. And in 2012, since the women quota, 20% of quota, the number of women candidates has increased significantly. And 2012 has been the mixed system. We use both proportional representation as well as the majoritarian system. And that year we got the highest number of women who run for the office, 32%. However, this year we had 24.9, almost 25% women who run, and 20% quota. Big parties almost made the number 20% quota. So, but though, on that note, I'm very glad that the number is not reduced from 13. Yeah. And Julian mentioned earlier that the voter turnout was 72.1%, and out of those, the total were 54.5% were women. So women in Mongolia are voting more, right? And these are the parliamentarians that we have. We have 13 women, 11 are from the Mongolian People's Party, and 2 are from the Democratic Party. And of those, 8 women are new to the parliament, and 5 were previously a member of parliament. So, but those 8 women also have political experience or public service experience. So they're not really without any experience. And it's interesting that many of them were TV personalities like Sarangerel, Soyunchimik, Jargatlma, and Anojing, and Ms. Bayersachen. She was also associated with Eagle TV, and she ran the Eagle TV for some period of time. And on the right-hand side, I listed some of their formal trainings. We have lawyers, and we have economists in political science, foreign relations, and also people who are working in the journalism. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, that's what I have. I hope we will have many more women parliamentarians in the coming elections. And given that, you know, 20% quota and 17% of the parliament is women, I think they should really increase the quota, because I think there's an appetite, or there seemed to be a case that despite the fact the majoritarian system, despite the fact that the women who are, fewer women are running, we have a good number of women who are being elected. So yeah, thank you. And we have Outlook. Over to you, Julian.
Good, thanks, BULGAN. Hey, Marissa, you got anthropologists always get the glory roles in Hollywood, at least. Us sociologists get nothing, but now we have neither an MP, neither anthropologist nor sociologist, locked out again by those economists.
There was, I did see somebody who put anthropologist on their little, like, like.
Yeah. But no victory. Oh well, we've gone a bit longer than we planned. Let me just give a bit of an outlook now to finish it off. Of course, we're expecting government stability. We're expecting Hurzuk to be elected prime minister. However, as I mentioned, we have a number of new faces for the MPP coming into parliament. And of course, with the constitutional amendments that took effect at the end of May, the relationship between parliament and the executive is shifting a little bit, right? Because there'll only be 4 members of cabinet who will be drawn from the ranks of the MPs. And so we'll have to see whether that means that relationship, parliament takes more of an oversight function or not. We don't know yet, because those constitutional changes are new. All this, of course, is after the election is before the election, obviously. Some of the Germans in the audience will recognize the reframing of that particular quote. But now we have 4 parties in parliament who get to nominate candidates for president. So I'm assuming that we'll see 4 presidential candidates next year. And that'll be a little bit of a different dynamic, I think. And then what's the government going to do immediately? Well, I mean, largely it's stability that we're looking for, the continuity and stability. Certainly the road to Dahan will have to be attacked. It's been an eyesore for, what, 9 months now or so, with everyone complaining about it. but then obviously the continuing pandemic and its implications, not just for exports and the economy, but particularly for employment, will be top of the list of things for the government to address. We're going to keep writing a little bit about the election as well. There's still some questions to be answered, including some of the ones that are coming in the chat. So keep reading and send us reactions to blog posts and the like. We're always very happy to hear those. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you.